Have you seen this painting? It's called The Treachery of Images by Rene Magritte. And in French down there below it says, "This is not a pipe." Okay, so it's a painting called The Treachery of Images. This is not a pipe. What is it? Of course, it's a painting of a pipe or an image of a pipe. But it's not actually a pipe. And similarly, I want to take a moment like this painting does to go meta, as I'm doing in a lot of these videos, and just say that this is not a speech, or at least not the kind of speech that I'm asking you to give in this class. In fact, what is this? This is a video lecture about how to deliver a speech. While I try to model good oral communication in these video lectures, I'm using a lot of different technology that I'm not asking you guys to use. So the only technology that I'm interested in this class for you to use, primarily for these assignments, is your voice and your body, right? So all the other kinds of editing, PowerPoint, use of images, I don't really want you to focus on that for this speech. What I want you to do is record yourself simulating a public speech. I want you to have an audience if you possibly can, given your pandemic response. Be sure to look at the speech rules about that. But at the very least, I want you to pretend that you're talking to an audience. So in this lecture video, I'm going to be discussing good oral communication and delivery for a public speech, and about what that should kind of look like when you're making your recordings of your simulated public speeches. So this is a lecture about dynamic delivery and the use of voice and body. Okay, so let's begin. I want to start first by talking to you a bit about the speech situation that we're in. So just to remind you, imagine you've joined a new class and you've been invited to speak for 3 to 5 minutes in order to introduce yourself to your peers. You will be, highlighted the wrong thing. You will be in a medium-sized room before an imagined diverse adult audience of 20 people. You're going to stand at the front of the room without podium or any obstruction between you and the audience. You're going to stand stationary because you're going to make a recording of it. But the audience is spread out in front of you, requiring you to turn your body at times to bring your eye contact at least 45 degrees to each side. Right? So while you might not be actually in a medium-sized room, that's what I want you to kind of pretend that you're doing in these assignments, these 3 speech assignments. Okay, so I'm going to make myself full screen here and continue on talking a bit about the elements of voice. So the thing we want to think about when we're using our voice for public speaking is that we want the voice to assist in comprehension of our message and memory and attention to our message. We want to make our voices dynamic and memorable, and also to use our voices to help our audiences understand the message. We're using a style of speaking called extemporaneous speaking, which means that it's prepared ahead of time. We're using brief notes that we have here on our note cards to trigger our memory, but we are drawing a large part from our memory, allowing for kind of unique sentence constructions with each iteration. But we're sticking to our main message, and we're talking in a kind of natural, conversational tone. We want a bit of ease in our vocal delivery. To achieve this, we need to have good volume. I need to be able to hear you in the video that you're making. So you need to speak loud enough so that I can practically evaluate you by hearing your message. But I also want you to practice good projection for bigger rooms with larger audiences. And to do this, you're going to need some good breath support. So I would practice what's called diaphragmatic breathing into your diaphragm. This would be something you could do well before the speech. Try to breathe deeply into your lungs, relaxing your shoulders, expanding out in your gut area here, so that you're getting the base support for your breath and volume, so that you can talk during the speech without running out of breath, right? And also give us that projection that we want. We want to project our volume to the back of the room. In addition to volume, we want a natural rate of speaking, not too fast, not too slow. Some people, when they get nervous, they speed up. Some do the opposite. You want to find a good medium, again, conversational, natural pace, and you want to use a variety of rates, slowing up at times, slowing down at times, and speeding up at other times. We also want to be aware of the tone of our voice, how high and low our voice is. We want to avoid monotone, flat delivery, where the tone sounds the same and kind of robotic like this, right? Tone helps us indicate our emotions about what we're talking about, whether we're enthusiastic in what we're talking about or bored. So you might not know it, but if you're speaking in monotone, you're conveying to your audience that you're just not that interested in speaking to them, or you're not that interested in the message, or you're just not that excited about what's going on there, and then they won't be as well. There is the principle of vocal variety that I've mentioned briefly, which is that we should try for variations in our volume, rate, and tone of voice. There's also the idea of articulation. Articulation is saying each part of every word. So words have different syllables and different sounds, and we want to help the audience hear those different sounds. Here's an example of kind of mumbling. You might say the word university and just kind of mumble the end and say university, university, right? University. Okay, that person is not articulating. You need to say university, right? So practice those warm-ups I talked about in the previous video. Be aware of your pausing. You want to have deliberate pauses, not random, out of nowhere pauses, right? So you want to avoid vocal pauses like I just did. Start to hear yourself making vocal pauses so that you can reduce them. They still happen. I know when you're listening to my lecture videos, you're probably counting each of the times I do it. It's something I do and I work on every day. And it's something that I want you to work on as well. Vocal pausing, reducing your pausing. In general, we want to speak with good vocal qualities that give us emphasis on important ideas, helps our audience follow along, that shows our enthusiasm about what we're talking about, that shows our confidence as a speaker, and also our belief that we believe what we're saying when we're saying it. We have conviction when we're saying it. So that's what I want you to think about when using your voice. With your body, we'll start with talking about the stance, right? Notice I'm standing far enough away from the camera that you could see me from the waist up and even a little bit of my legs. If I was giving my speech, I could go all the way back from here. This would be helpful for me to evaluate you, because now I can see how you're moving, right? If you are moving. Okay, so let's start with the stance. The stance that we want to have, we want to have what I call a power stance, right? Your feet about shoulder length apart, your chest up and open, your stance and posture open to the audience. We have our weight evenly distributed on our feet. We're not leaning over on one hip. We're not bouncing from one hip to the other. We are strong and balanced and stable. When it comes to movement, I'm not asking you to move. I'm asking you to hold a position the entire time that you're speaking. Movement is a skill for public speaking, but due to the nature of the recording, we're not going to practice that skill. Practice that on your own, okay? I want you to practice holding position, being stable in your position. I'm going to talk in a minute about eye contact. Thus far, I've been locked on the camera, right? Because I'm talking to you, my students. This is not a speech, this is a lecture video. I'll talk in a moment about eye contact, but that will have you turning your body potentially slightly. In addition to movement, I want you to think about gestures, and I've been trying to do this as I'm talking to you today. I want you to constantly gesture for the majority of the time that you're speaking. So holding your hands like chipmunks, no. Behind your back, no. In your pocket, no. Tugging on your clothes, please don't, okay? So hold your cards with one hand. It's a 3x5 note card. That's what's been assigned to you. This is about the size of a 3x5 note card, and that's about the amount of text that I have on these, right? Very clear and gives me prompting. I'm holding the note cards in one hand. This frees up my hands for gesturing, and I can go here and manipulate the cards thusly. Notice I have my cards numbered so that I can get them in order, and we're over here on gestures and cards. Keep your hands apart, it says. Keep your hands apart. Yes, keep your hands apart. Don't hold your hands together throughout your speech. Okay? Try not to bend your cards, manipulate your cards, bang your cards, slap your legs, things like this. The gestures that I would like to see should occur kind of like, imagine like a box here, right? Above your waist, there's a little box here, and your hands can just be moving in whatever manner is natural to you. I think palms up are better. Palms up are more inviting. There's studies done about this. The audience speakers who speak with their palms up are perceived as a more inviting, warm, compassionate speaker than speakers who point and are more aggressive this way. So I recommend palms up and just kind of small little gestures. You can, of course, plan certain gestures. My first point, my second point. Back in the day, my little cousin, I caught a fish this big. So you can plan little iconic gestures throughout the speech at certain strategic moments, but otherwise you should just be using your gestures to emphasize, to guide the audience along, to illustrate what you're talking about. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for gestures, like this, okay? Eye contact should be a large percentage of your speech. I think in the book it says 80% of the speech or so should be with eye contact. Okay. Now, I'm asking you to give your speeches like there's audiences in the room. So I want you to decenter the camera. I've been talking to the camera this whole time. I want you to decenter the camera, and I want you to talk to the people who are in the room. For those of you who don't have an audience, you can do what I'm doing right now, which is I actually have a face decoration on the wall here. So there's a face over here on my wall that's just always there. And I put my teddy bear, I promise you, my teddy bear that I had since I was a little kid over here on the chair. And so I could turn and I could talk to my lamp, the teddy bear, the chair. I could talk to the camera a little bit. I could turn it, I could talk to the face over here. And that's the kind of eye contact that I'm asking you to do in this speech. A kind of eye contact that's aware of the audience that's gathered here in the room. So use audience styles, but don't look directly at the camera. And then lastly, and super important, don't read your speech. Right? You're going to use your eye contact up. You're going to look down at your cards to guide you through the speech. And as we get to speech number 2 and there's more information, I'm going to be allowing you to put a little bit of more information on these cards. But you should not be reading the speech. And in fact, if you read the speech, you're going to lose points on delivery, as well as use of note cards, as well as I might just put a flat penalty on your speech, depending on how egregious it is. So we're doing extemporaneous speaking. I want you to practice extemporaneous speaking. Well, I hope this video was helpful for you. At the end of your speech, you're going to have to do what I do. Just walk up here and turn the video off, because remember, I'm asking you to not do any editing of these videos. This is not a video lecture making class. This is a public speaking class.